Hello everyone, Daria here, and welcome to episode number 109 of the Slow Russian Language podcast. Today's episode was requested by one of my wonderful students, Nicole. She really wanted to learn more about Catherine the Great, our wonderful empress from the 18th century. And this text is quite difficult, so I decided not to read the full text at first, but rather translate it sentence by sentence, and then at the end we're going to read the whole thing. And don't forget that now you can purchase all the transcripts of the Slow Russian Language podcast, and the link is in the description. All the MP3s and the PDFs with text both in Russian and English, it's all on my website. So please check out the link in the description or just go to realrussianclub.com. Okay, the first sentence. Екатерина II, также известная как Екатерина Великая, правила Российской империей в XVIII веке. So Catherine II, also known as Catherine the Great, ruled the Russian Empire in the 18th century. So Catherine, Екатерина. There are two names we usually refer Catherine II, because we also had Catherine I. We did have Екатерина I. She was the wife of Peter the Great, the one who opened Russia to Europe and the one who established St. Petersburg, our beautiful city. So his wife was Catherine I, and this one was Catherine II. Also, we call her the Great. Екатерина Великая. Великий in Russian means great. So she was ruling in the 18th century, в XVIII веке. Век is century. The 20th century, 20 век. Now 21st, 21 век. And she ruled. To rule in Russian is править. Править. Она правила Российской империей. Russian Empire. Империя. And to be exact, from 1762 to 1796. I have this strange flex knowing all the exact dates of all Russian rulers. I have no idea why I need this information, but yep, that's what I do. Okay, the second sentence. She is one of the most famous and influential figures in Russian history. Она является одной из самых известных и влиятельных фигур в истории России. Again, Russian words are so long compared to English words. So, она является. I already told you before that we simply can say она одна из blah-blah-blah. But this является, to be, она является, this is usually for the text. In real speaking, in everyday speech, daily conversations, you would never hear this. However, in the official language, in articles, in TV news, in some presentations or anything, this являться is very, very common. So she is one of the most famous and influential. Известных и влиятельных. Influential, interesting word. Influential figure. Влиятельная фигура. Figura. In Russian history or in the history of Russia. В истории России. В истории России, which is very interesting because she ethnically is not even Russian, and she never spoke the Russian language until she was promised to one of the Russian czars, one of the Russian kings, Peter III. So she had nothing to do with Russia. So how ironical is that she became the most famous figure in Russian history, and everybody knows her as the Empress of Russia, this Catherine the Great, and she's not even Russian. By the way, I do have the course about Russian history and Russian culture where we talk in details about Russian rulers and who is who and what they did for the country and how it all affected today's Russia and the perceptions of Russian people. The course is called Understanding Russia, and you can find the link again in the description. So if you're interested in stuff like that, you are more than welcome to join. We have the full long lectures there about all this and all these people. So Catherine the Great, she's German. Она немка. Okay, so she came to power. After overthrowing her husband, Peter III. Let's translate this part first, and then we continue with the sentence. So she came to power. Екатерина пришла к власти. Same as in English. Came to power. Пришла к власти. Власть in Russian is power. Пришла к власти. After overthrowing her husband, Peter III. После свержения своего мужа. Муж Петр III. So, свержение, overthrowing, свержение. The verb would be свергнуть. And then she entered the history as an enlightened monarch who actively contributed to the expansion and modernization of Russia. Она вошла в историю. Wonderful examples of verbs of motion, and all of them are used here metaphorically, not in their direct meaning. So she came to power. Она пришла к власти. And then she entered the history. Вошла в историю. So she entered the history, went down in history as the enlightened monarch. Как просвещённый monarch. I think we already had this word before in one of the episodes about the Enlightenment period in the 18th century, mostly in France, in Europe in general. Просвещение. Usually it's associated with the names of Voltaire, other philosophers. So she was in close contact with them, sending letters to them, having meetings, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so where were we? So she went down in history as this enlightened monarch. Просвещённый monarch. What does it mean? Technically, it just means that she's trying to think about the good of all people, not just the elites, but kind of thinking about the peasants, thinking of how to make life better for peasants. Can you imagine that, right? What ruler would suddenly think about peasants? So yeah, this is what the enlightened monarch is. Some ruler who thinks about the ideas, the high morals like freedom, right, all that stuff. But yeah, surprisingly, it was not that common back then. Okay, so she was one of those types of people. But most of the time it was just the facade. Okay, so she actively contributed to the expansion and modernization of Russia. Активно содействовавший расширению и модернизации России. Remember I told you when the word ends on tion, this shin, probably in Russian it would end on ция. Revolution, революция, aviation, авиация, modernization, модернизация. Yeah, so modernization of Russia, модернизация России. Basically developing Russia, making Russia more like European countries of that time. Because remember, Russia was quite rural and agricultural for a long time, for centuries. Again, because of all the historical aspects of our development. And again, if you want to learn more, feel free to join my course. Okay, moving on. Catherine carried out a number of important reforms aimed at strengthening state power and developing culture. Long sentence. Okay, so Екатерина провела ряд важных реформ. Реформа is some political change, some new laws, or maybe something related to some changes in the country. Реформа. So, ряд literally means the row, ряд. For example, in the theater, ряд Б, row B, or row number 5, ряд 5. However, we usually use this word to show some amount of something. It means several. So she implemented several reforms. Она провела ряд реформ. So in English, you probably wouldn't say the row of reforms, but it is very common to say that in Russian. Okay, so they were aimed at направленных на укрепление власти, strengthening the power, authority, власть, and development of culture, и развитие культуры, genitive case. Remember when you say something of something, probably it's genitive case. So development of culture, развитие культуры, genitive case. Alrighty, her reign was marked by significant territorial acquisitions. Ее правление, her reign. Remember we used the verb править in the beginning of this text, to rule. Она правила. But we also have the noun, reign, правление. Same root, правление. It was marked by significant territorial acquisitions. Ее правление ознаменовалось. Such a long verb compared to the English marked, right? So ее правление ознаменовалось значительными территориальными. It's a nightmare for people who can't roll their R's. Территориальными. Приобретениями. That's insane. That is insane. I am sorry for this. So yeah, territorial acquisitions. Территориальными приобретениями. You can always look at the transcript of the text in the description of this episode. So if you don't understand something that I'm saying in Russian, please feel free to refer to the text in the description. So, территориальными приобретениями, including the inclusion, how funny is that? Crimea, that peninsula, Crimea, and parts of Poland. Oh, the infamous division of Poland. I think still up to this date, Polish people sometimes dislike Russia for that part of our history, because Poland and Russia have been rivals for centuries and centuries. And at some point, Polish rulers, Polish kings were even sitting on the Moscow throne. So it's a really long relationship we have with Poland, and Catherine basically made Poland cease to exist. They divided it 2 times in 3 parts. So it's a very sad page in the history of Poland. But for Russia, this is a great page, obviously, because it's new lands, more people joining the huge Russian Empire. So Crimea was included, and a huge part of Poland became part of Russia for several centuries. Moving on. Catherine also actively interacted with many of the leading minds of her time, including Voltaire and Diderot. I'm not sure about the pronunciation of Diderot. It's a French philosopher. In Russian, we say Diderot. So maybe you know him. In English, I would say Diderot, I guess. I don't know. Sorry. So you can Google him, the Enlightenment figure. So, Екатерина также активно взаимодействовала, actively interacted with many of the leading minds of her time. Со многими выдающимися умами. Again, выдающийся. Выдающийся is something like unique or amazing. Выдающийся, exceptional, I would say. Exceptional. So she was interacting with exceptional minds of her time, ее времени, who were Voltaire and Diderot. Да, Вольтером и Дидро. Voltaire и Diderot. Voltaire is a very interesting man, had very interesting relationship with his monarch, and worth reading about for sure, Voltaire. Okay, so her, I lost it. Where was I? Her contribution to the development of the Enlightenment ideas in Russia was significant. So her contribution, ее вклад. Вклад, it only sounds like вклад. It's spelled as вклад with V. Вклад. Вклад в развитие идеалов. Her contribution to the development of the ideals. Развитие идеалов. Ideals, values, идеал. So her contribution was significant. Вклад был значительный. Значительный. Significant, important, значительный. Okay, and we're close to the end. Catherine was unable to completely overcome the entrenched feudal orders. Екатерина не смогла полностью преодолеть. Полностью means completely. Полностью or entirely, fully. Полностью. For example, I agree. I completely agree. I absolutely agree. Я полностью согласен. Very common expression. Я полностью согласен. I totally agree. Полностью согласен. So she could not overcome the feudal orders. Феодальные порядки. Feudal, it must be an unknown concept for Americans. Mostly in Europe, it was huge order that lasted again for centuries, when there is the king and there is another layer of important people, and under them there is a group of other people, and this is a very strict hierarchy. And peasants who were at the down part of this ladder, they were basically attached to their land, and the land belonged to their master, to the feudal. And the same system existed in Russia. It wasn't formed in one day, it took some time, but basically we did have almost like a slavery in Russia up until the middle of the 19th century. And it's actually at the same time as slaves were freed in America, this 1861, literally same time as American Civil War. It was in Russia when the final decree about freeing the peasants came to see the world. So yeah, we did have a very strict and very strong feudal order for a very long time. So she could not overcome it. I guess she just didn't want to, and maybe Russia was not ready for it to be canceled so early. And unfortunately, who knows how our history would have turned if 80% of the population, which peasants were freed hundreds of years prior to when they were freed. Interesting, always interesting to think about history. So she could not or didn't want to overcome the feudal orders, and serfdom of the peasants remained unchanged until the end of her reign. Она не смогла преодолеть феодальные порядки, и крепостное право, serfdom, крепостное право, осталось неизменным. Неизменный means unchanged. Неизменный. Up until the end of her rule. До конца ее царствования. So it's another word for reign. Правление, царствование. From the word царь, the czar. tsardom. I guess you can say her tsardom, ее царствование. Okay, and to conclude, her rule left a deep mark in the history of Russia. Ее правление оставило глубокий след в истории России. Whew, that's it. Оставить глубокий след, to leave a deep mark. Yeah, to leave something significant after you. Or something leaves this deep mark in your memory, for example. Оставить глубокий след. So this text was very, very official, almost like from a textbook. Why is Catherine the Great so popular? Usually her personality attracts people to her because she is the example of this really powerful, incredible, amazing woman. And you can read her letters. Everything is published today. There are memoirs of her from the closest people of her. It's just incredible what we can learn now. So her life is absolutely just something. So I can't retell it, but from her childhood up to her last days, this woman was absolutely incredible. Her relationship with man is a completely different story, and how she's basically responsible for the death of her husband. So she organized his death to gain power, and how she was able to how to put it to words, I'm not sure. So she is this German girl from a very small, almost completely insignificant German little land, and she came to this massive empire, and she built herself as one of the strongest leaders of the country. And she made sure, she was a very smart woman, she made sure to be loved by commoners. One of the mistakes of her husband, this Peter III, who she overthrew, one of his mistakes was he was hating everything Russian. He spent lots of his times in Europe, and he was not a fan of Russia at all. And he only came to power because the previous empress was childless. And there's the whole another drama, how this childless empress took Catherine's child, Paul, and she was basically separated from her only son. It's just tragic story. So please read more about Catherine, or again, you can join my course. I'm telling a lot about her there. Yeah, very interesting woman, worth reading about and watching documentaries about. There are some popular TV shows, some of them are on Amazon. Another one I think is on Netflix, but it's more like a playful, funny one that has nothing to do with history. But everything is worth watching. Why not? If you're interested in her historical figure. So let me quickly read the full text, and that will be it for today. Let's see how much you can understand. But again, this text is very, very difficult, so don't be surprised that you don't understand some of these words. Okay, here we go. Екатерина II, также известная как Екатерина Великая, правила Российской империи в XVIII веке. Она является одной из самых известных и влиятельных фигур в истории России. Екатерина пришла к власти после свержения своего мужа Петра III и вошла в историю как просвещённый монарх, активно содействовавший расширению и модернизации России. Екатерина провела ряд важных реформ, направленных на укрепление государственной власти и развитие культуры. Ее правление ознаменовалось значительными территориальными приобретениями, включение Крыма и частей Польши. Екатерина также активно взаимодействовала со многими выдающимися умами своего времени, включая Вольтера и Дидро. Ее вклад в развитие идеалов просвещения в России был значителен. Екатерина не смогла полностью преодолеть устойчивые феодальные порядки, и крепостное право осталось неизменным до конца ее царствования. Ее правление оставило глубокий след в истории России. Oh, that is a very, very difficult text. So I am happy for you that you even listened to it till the end. And I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure to check out the description box of this episode for the full transcript and for all the links. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode of the Slow Russian Language Podcast. Bye-bye.